This is A New Angle, a show about cool people doing awesome things in and around Montana. I'm your host, Justin Angle. This show is supported by First Security Bank, Blackfoot Communications, and the University of Montana College of Business. Hey folks, welcome back, and thanks for tuning in. Today I'm speaking with Curt Olds, internationally renowned singer in opera and musical theater, director, and entrepreneur.
Let's tell stories about today. Let's not depend on those of the past or those that are problematic, but let's tell new stories.
Curt has performed on Broadway, at the Lincoln Center, and at Carnegie Hall. He is a Butte native and a graduate of the University of Montana with a degree in vocal performance. Curt, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thank you very much. It's great to be here.
So tell us, where did you grow up and what did your parents do?
Yeah, I grew up in Butte, Montana, and I'm still a very proud Butte native. My mom was, she was an artisan of her own, many different facets. She went to the University of Montana back when it was MSU.
Okay.
Lived in North Corbin, just right behind where we are right here. And she owned a bridal shop. And my dad was an electrical engineer with the mining operations in Butte, and then later Westinghouse and some other places as he traveled after the mines closed down in Butte in the early 80s.
And how did you kind of find the performing arts? What was your on-ramp?
I always loved performing, but it was really that visit from the Missoula Children's Theater of all places that entered into my life. They had started the prototypes for their tour that now dominates the world. And they came to Butte and a few other cities as they branched out of theater in Missoula specifically. And I was one of those kids early on. And that gave me a format which got me into the local community theater. And I just never left. You know, that's just been my life. I luckily had a focus from a very early age. And it took over my life, you know.
And is that kind of some of the motivation to come to the University of Montana and study vocal?
I got really lucky with the voice training. When my voice started to change, a woman from New York City, her husband came to redevelop one of the state hospitals here.
Oh.
And she had gotten married late in life. And he said, why don't you come out here? And then after I finish this work, I'm going to retire in Montana. Mm-hmm. And she had been a singer at the Metropolitan Opera, and she came out here with him, and she heard me sing at something, and she was not interested in teaching voice, but she took a few students, and she took me under her wing and really got me into the national, you know, she said, you have something here. And as I tell young students now, anytime I teach around the country, it was the perfect place for me. I had the mentors I needed, and I had a very small swimming pool. And, you know, quite frankly, I had the university and I still had the Missoula Children's Theater, which they had known me since I was 7. It was just a wonderful time. And by the time I got to grad school in Boston, I was just raring to go because the University of Montana was such a fertile place for me to sop up anything I wanted. And the faculty is today and was then just really, really great.
I'm sure there was doubt along the way at various points, but it sounds like a pretty direct path to being a professional performer.
Yeah, one would think. I mean, it's in retrospect, it sounds so easy, but
path straightens behind us.
Yeah, right. That's very good. But eventually, I moved to Boston to go to New England Conservatory, and I was a little reluctant to move to New York without any job.
Yeah.
So I kind of waited. I did some of the bigger shows over in Europe. I went over to Germany for a while, and then eventually there was work for me in New York.
Yeah, describe that kind of like how it actually starts happening, like how you get roles and, jobs basically, and what the structure of those are like as a young performer trying to find your way early.
Yeah, it's the crossroad at that point for an artist is really, really difficult. It's almost a catch 44, if I can use that term.
Okay.
Because, you have to have certain credits to step ahead, but you can't step ahead until you haven't, but you have to not only be doing as much as you can as a performer and training, but you also have to be doing sort of the schmoozy political thing in that you have to get to know that those subworlds of the casting agent, which is sort of, as I call it, the gatekeeper. They're the
person who makes the decisions.
Yeah, the producer of those bigger shows or any show bigger than a regional theater will hire a casting agent. There's just too many people. So they'll say, I want this and this and this, and the casting director makes up lists, contacts, they get to know the talent, and then they say, okay, great, you want to look at 7 people for this role. Mm-hmm. They go out and vet the 7, so when they come in for that audition, they're ready to go. The producers already have 7 possibilities. Now, the producers could have some of their own, and that's a whole different world, to get in and to know the producers. But that environment is sort of where you begin. I always tell people, try to get as much footing as you possibly can. Keep lists of those places that you are working. You keep your business mind about you. Don't just go in, because it is a hobby. And a lot of people view that, a lot of people have hard, long careers, but they still do theater on the side. They still play in a community band or an orchestra. It's easy to incorporate the performing arts, but if it is your business, you have to work at it. I always say, how many lawyers would be successful if they took 4 days off and watched TV?
Right.
It's not even possible. And you can't do that either. Business is business. And so what are you doing on a daily basis to track out? How are you getting to know your people? How are you taking care of yourself? How are you grooming your business to be profitable?
And what was the point at which it sort of became real? Like, was there a breakthrough role or an opportunity or something like that where it sort of became clear that, okay, this life as a professional artist is going to happen for me?
My breakouts were really small. I didn't need that big one.
Okay.
I needed to just know that I had solid ground in front of me. And so I did get some of those, landing your first Broadway contract, or, switching when I got a big production of the Magic Flute, Mozart's Magic Flute, that sort of, I knew at that point there was no going back. It was a gradual process to that. But once I landed that with the help of 2 or 3 people, and honestly, a director, I was not the one cast. And the director said, I want him or I don't want to do the project.
Really?
I had a couple friends like that believed in my talent.
Yeah.
And, the company was left to say, okay, fine, give the kid a chance. It's not that big of a deal. We can't lose the director. So I've spent more time being thankful than being in awe of what I got, because it was such a major leap.
Sure.
It's been, and luckily I've been able to depend on those people for the long run. And as my career turned towards production and hiring and staffing symphony shows and all that, I turned to those people because they're great sources of, who do you think can I put on this stage when I'm not even going to be there and they're going to be singing with, say, Milwaukee Symphony. All those friends along the way are just a great library of great minds that can help us all stay working,
Yeah, and you give so much back to students and younger performers who are trying to work their way through the system. Talk about that, your work in production and Black Tie Broadway and some of your work with agencies.
With the next generation, I always want to I feel like I have a lamp and I can kind of see a little bit ahead of them. And I'm like, hey, look,
Yeah.
That's always been my attitude. Lacking in opportunities at a certain point in my life, I just realized I had done some symphony pops and I saw how sloppy that world was. A lot of orchestras don't want to deal with symphony pops.
Okay.
They want to just do the main work. They can't.
Yeah, kind of describe that for the listener not familiar with symphony pops.
Symphony orchestras, conductors, any of the executive directors, their love, most of them, are for the big symphonic works,
Sure.
And they're very protective of those works. They want to make sure that tradition continues. And unfortunately, symphony pops plays the bills. And if you have, the best producers out there, the best symphonies do a nice mix. The symphony pops that I had participated in was really sloppy. I'd go to this orchestra, this decent orchestra, and it was just thrown together. Okay, just get it up. They're great. They're from Broadway. Sing your tunes, and then let's move on because we got to plan the Mahler Eighth.
Okay.
The Mahler Eighth is coming next spring, and but they took the money from Rodgers and Hammerstein and
Sure.
Stephen Sondheim, Andrew Lloyd Webber, and I just found, look, if you can make this really easy for it, it's not that they hate it. It's just a lot of work. And it's a lot of licensing because every piece, when you pull it from a show, has to be licensed separate.
Sure, complicated.
Yeah. So I thought, if I can just clean that process up and have 2 or 3 offerings to just go, hey, here we go. And they responded. And based on my reputation as a performer, I started to slip in some symphony shows there.
Okay.
And so then you have some dexterity. You got to learn with who else is producing out there and what pools to stay out of and learn your space. And once again, I think never really caring about that great big one, I was happy to take and help those smaller symphony orchestras, mainly because I love my Montana symphony orchestras. And we have so many here. It's crazy. Great Falls, Billings, Butte, being the oldest in my hometown, which I'm always very protective. Butte must always have a symphony orchestra, and I'll do anything. Missoula, that just was, I did so many works there, and their new leadership, I'm working with them currently. Kalispell has Glacier Symphony. It's an amazing place. But helping those kind of orchestras have access to, talent, and, they don't have to go through all the agencies because I can take care of that for them. On that other front, I was an agent for a number of years,
Right.
handling classical artists and helping them sort of step into the crossover world, as we call it, stepping into the occasional musical, helping them get some commercial work or some voiceover work. If you sit down and do even a gig or two of voiceover work, it'll pay you more than 3 or 4 gigs.
For sure.
Now that you have to be ready to go against those professionals that do that, It's all good work. And I really enjoyed those years and love those colleagues.
Give us just a little, and I'm speaking from a position of total ignorance here, but give us just a little view of like how you develop a professional voice. Like what is I think people are probably familiar with, hey, this is how somebody goes and trains for a marathon. Like they'll go run distances and speeds and so forth. But like what is involved in training a voice?
Yeah, and it's the weightlifter is a manifestation that we can see.
Sure.
When we're dealing with that, we spend just as much time in developing a voice in a very, very small, very delicate muscle group.
Okay.
That can be, destroyed momentarily. I mean, the same thing. Form, how you go about the, quote, weightlifting of it. The form is important. And setting up excellent vocal technique, learning your apparatus, how to put the breath through the cords, how to keep the muscle, the diaphragm going, all of that, the rib cage up, all of those little things add to the length of your career, how much money you're going to be making on it, keeping your voice in perfect shape. But yeah, you do have to train. And you look at people that have a propensity or a desire even to want to sing at sort of that next level. Mm-hmm. And then the good teachers will assess how much does this person really need my help. And this is where it can go wrong sometimes because there are so many people, well, there's a big handful that don't need voice teachers at all. Just their technique's there. It's God-given, it's born with, whatever your belief system is, it exists. So how much do I have to go in that to bother it? You know what I mean? And sometimes that can be messed up. The sense of pitch is a big thing. How you identify pitch. Can you keep a pitch? Can it be corrected or is it a problem? All of these will make that decision whether or not it's going to, what I love is when I hear somebody that's never sung a note in their life, but I can hear natural resonance in their voice. Their voice is placed exactly where it goes. And I obsess. Like, I want to get in a studio with you and just like put some air through that because you can hear the natural instrument.
Coach them up and get them involved. Yeah.
And then if you're looking at going classical, you're going to be competing against people not only vocally, but also in the dexterity of language, in scholasticism. So, when I jumped into the business, it was Italian, French, English, and now you are expected, in the way the world's changing, I mean, the Spanish influence on the music world, the Russian influence was always there. We always had Tchaikovsky. We always had those composers, but now it's such a great language to sing in, any of those sort of Russian Eastern languages, because they go from the vowels into these, all that sound, and it just flows so nicely, The hardest is relearning how to sing in English, because
after all that,
well, I mean, as an English speaker, because we do not sing the same way that we speak.
Sure.
And so people underestimate how long it's going to be before you're singing in English. You can learn French and Italian. Italian's the easiest because there's so few vowels or vowel combinations.
Okay.
It's very pure language. So you can get going on that. You can get a good teenage singer that, especially boys where their voice just changed, that's what my experience is. Girls a little earlier, but you can get them going on Italian really quick. English, it's crazy how awful it sounds. And especially if they've done some musicals, because we go into a vernacular of different sounds in musicals, a lot of really, rounding in the words, and then to go back and do a singing classical English. It's not a dialect. It's how you put the voice through and where on the teeth and tongue you're placing those vowels and consonants. So it becomes a dance.
We'll be back to my conversation with Curt Olds after this short break. A New Angle is supported by First Security Bank, Blackfoot Communications, and UM's College of Business. Access to capital, broadband, and education are 3 ingredients any community needs for success.
Hi, this is Anya Jabor, Regents Professor of History at the University of Montana, and you are listening to A New Angle.
Welcome back to A New Angle. I'm speaking with internationally renowned opera singer and musical theater performer Curt Olds. So you've had the great fortune of performing such a wide variety of roles and contexts, and over, what's becoming a long career, social norms and memes and the political moments of the day have changed over the arc of that. And you've performed in some shows that, that how they are viewed by the public and representation amongst the cast and so forth have changed. Talk about that, how changing standards have affected the field and then your approach to the work as well.
Yeah, I think the biggest example from my career, I early on in my life did a lot and still do a lot of Gilbert and Sullivan, the operettas of Gilbert and Sullivan. And their most successful work is The Mikado, right? It takes place in Japan. And it came out of the time when Japan was closed like North Korea is today. We knew nothing. It was hard to get information. And then that day came when Japan opened the floodgates, culturally and everything, and it dominated the world. Everybody wanted to wear a kimono and a teapot, and it got garish. It was so, it went into fabrics, it went into movement, it went into pop culture. I mean, and from that, Gilbert and Sullivan wrote this Valentine that is The Mikado, viewed in today's world. Now, I went on to do 26 productions of The Mikado, and Coco in The Mikado, that character, is a best friend to me. I mean, it is like death.
When is this happening?
Well, the last time I did Mikado, and it was a very special production that downplayed a lot of that, was 2017.
Okay. So relatively recently.
Kentucky Opera. Yeah, it's intensified. And I don't disagree with the reason it's being looked at this way. I also do not think it's inherently racist necessarily, The Mikado, if you view it through the points I just said.
Sure.
But I understand the point being made, and you don't have 3-hour tutorial to start that. When the curtain goes up, all you see is a representation of Caucasians as Asians, and that is not okay. So will we get the Mikado back at some point? I don't know. I hope, or some version of it. There's been many attempts to change it, or, it's really not dependent, since it's so fluffy, it's not dependent on Japan. But then are you doing it injustice if you take away the Japanese, It's a very interesting conversation to have, and it's an important one to have. It's very important to handle that correctly, and also how to handle those pieces that might be viewed particularly Caucasian, say the new revival on Broadway of Camelot. Just given the time period, it doesn't dictate to men, but we need to adjust that. We can adjust that. It doesn't make any sense not to. So you're seeing this wonderfully diverse cast in New York right now in the traditionally Caucasian white production of Camelot, and it looks spectacular. But then again, where does that line go? Are we pushing it, or are we just being inclusive, or are we being racist? Like, where is that line? It's very delicate. And I think right now, the best thing we can do is just assess each thing as we go along and take feedback. And like I tell everybody, keep a sense of humor.
Right.
Give us the benefit of the doubt, and let's learn together. There's a lot of different people on a lot of different places on the spectrum. The last being the paying audience. You know what I mean? That's the last person we consider, where they really should be the first, because by the time all the decisions have made and all the choices in casting and all that on the creative and artist side, then we play it for the audience, and you have a totally different court of opinion.
Sure.
And that can go totally south. So, you have to make decisions, and you have to have leaders, but you also have to take a consensus.
Yeah, that role of the audience is interesting, because if you rely solely on the audience as your sort of evaluator, you might cater to a population that's less progressive than the performers, or less progressive than the production company, or the content that you're putting on the stage.
Right.
So what is the balance there? Because that is a role of art, is to challenge people's worldview and to make them think about the world differently. And
it is, but it's also not a democracy. You know what I mean? The arts, you know what I mean? Yeah. You have to view it that way. Van Gogh got to put on paint, on a canvas what he wanted.
Yeah.
And you judge accordingly. So it does have to come, and somebody has to be responsible. You can't.
Right.
The business, the actual art of making theater, it's more like the military than anything else. You know what I mean? And we have to have a leader. We have to have a director or a producer, and so for that reason, it can't be a total democracy. And audiences love to, and this I think is the other thing that used to balance that a little bit, was the art of criticism. Now everybody's a critic, right?
Yeah.
So everybody can sit in their little bedroom and write a review. They've had no schooling on how to do that, no journalism degree, no study of criticism, and we've lost that. Even the New York Times, doesn't really have that department that they used to. So that used to provide quite a service because they monitored and they sort of educated that audience coming or going to that show on points historically in the profession, on the points on how that was created, and was the production good or bad?
Sure.
We don't have that anymore. Yeah. We just have opinion. We just have I didn't like it, not why or how or, so it becomes more like I know what I like and I like what I know, that argument. And I think the critic used to balance that more. And I think the value of that. And when, publications are suffering because people aren't picking up a printed newspaper anymore. So, and they were reluctant to jump on. So things got cut back, and criticism was one of the first things in all forms. You just don't see the educated professional critic, being out there anymore. And I think that's a big part to this, to keeping us all on, whoa, this is how it's being viewed. This is why it's being presented,
Yeah, there is some balance there between sort of a flattening of opportunity in a way. It's less hierarchical, but with that, it sounds like there's potential for just a weakening of understanding, a weakening of standards, and just sort of this view from I like it or I don't like it, and I don't really understand why.
Right. But one of the most exciting things that I'm seeing in the business now is I think we've turned a corner a little bit in the argument of casting and criticism and all that, in that my personal thought is the answer is telling new works. You know what I mean? Let's tell stories about today. Let's not depend on those of the past or those that are problematic. Sure. I mean, we will pull those out, those Valentines, those shows that really do deserve a spot. But let's tell new stories. Yeah. Let's tell stories we've never told before that don't have all the racial hullabaloo to it. You know what I mean? Let's get going on those. The art form opera, musical theater, any of it has always been the best time. We call the golden age. We were writing shows in the 40s and 50s about right then. You know what I mean? Where's our shows today? They're out there, but they're not getting the play that normally they would. People also use it as escapism. So some show like Moulin Rouge on Broadway right now, that big pot, you just kind of want to go. Or my favorite, because I've been involved in it, Phantom of the Opera. Why does it survive so long? Because it's a classic tale, right? And we have adjusted that show over the years, How much does the Phantom throw Christine down on the floor? Well, he doesn't throw her down like he used to. You know what I mean? She has more of a balance to the direction and angle of the show. And it's really interesting to see how that piece has changed,
And that can lead audiences back to the sort of role of art in challenging an audience. Like the on-ramp can be this familiarity. Yeah, we know Phantom of the Opera. It's familiar. I love it. But if I see it produced in a different way with a cast that looks differently or the roles played out differently, that can kind of push the envelope of thought, of existence in a way that the audience is maybe already there in a way that they wouldn't be if everything was totally new and disorienting. So one of the reasons you're back in Montana right now is for this great honor happening across the street at the College of the Arts and Media. You're the honoree for this year's Odyssey of the Stars. Talk about this honor and what it means to you.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've been involved with the Odyssey off and on since the beginning, but when they called, I thought they were just calling to ask me to be a performer for somebody else. And they, Dean Bevsky said, no, it's actually you.
Nice.
So I'm nervous about that, and I'm incredibly honored. And I'm incredibly happy that the Odyssey as a event still happens. It's a great spotlight on the arts. It's a great fundraiser, and it's a great way to incorporate alum that have gone on to varying degrees of success in different fields to come back and really interact with the students there. If not just to be an ambassador of, it's worth it, keep going.
Sure. Yeah, talk about that role with the students. How much time do you get with them, and what are some of the key messages you try to impart?
Yeah, well, and especially the University of Montana students, I always try my best to get access to them and to help them if I can answer questions. So we'll spend time together. There's a group of students, I believe it's called the Zootown Cabaret, that will be performing with me. Unlike some of the other honorees, since I still have an active career, they asked me, to do some numbers.
Get right in there.
And to up the show. I mean, it's and it's easy to make it very enjoyable. I think the harder ones to do are when you're honoring an artist that isn't so razzmatazz, because those are very important honors too. This year we can be a little more razzmatazz because that's pretty much what I do.
Yeah,
so
I look forward to
it. Why not do it, and have some good numbers, and I get to perform with the students, I get to work with them, and just spend, probably 8 to 10 hours this week working with them. So I always say, hey, look, if you have a question, I remain dedicated. Like, shoot me that question. I'll see if I have an answer. Mm-hmm. This is part of networking. And if you can practice on me, then you know how to contact other people,
sure.
Because you're going to depend on those people. And it's great. And I mean, I will, I probably get in my workshops, I teach at New England Conservatory too occasionally. Mm-hmm. And then the oddball masterclass if I'm in a town working. And I have a wonderful network of young artists, some of which I've gone on to hire, those connections we really depend on long term, because you never know where that need might arise.
So last question, Curt, is as you kind of look at your arc of a career and what's ahead of you, how do you make choices about opportunities you say yes to and things you sort of stay away from?
Yeah, that's always hard for me. I just try to say yes and shove it all in. Recently, 2 big things happened for me. I became the director of artistic planning for Utah Festival Opera and Musical Theater down in Logan. So that's close. Thank you. That is a new part of my career, is being on the artistic teams of that. We also have, for all Montanans out there, I've been working very closely with a few people, Linda Curtis in Bozeman mainly, on a new company called Montana Musicals that will help bring some more programming to enhance not to take the place of anything that's going on in the state, because I'm supportive of all of that, but to see how we can work together with the organizations I support and work with to bring quality musical theater and operatic performing around the state. We're gonna start next season with 2 titles we're getting ready to announce. And being Butte and being that it's in the center of the state, we'll do a lot of the rehearsing and stuff in that location. Super. It'll involve people from all over the state coming together to form the ensemble and the orchestra. And then we'll bring in talent and scenery and all of that. And we'll start in Bozeman because we have some infrastructure there. And then I hope to, over the course of the next week, talk to a couple of people I have meetings with to see if we can get that to Missoula too. So that'd be a nice little trifecta right here.
Very good. Well, Curt, it's so great to spend some time with you, learn about your world, and particularly during this week with the great honor with the Odyssey of the Stars production. Thanks for spending some time with us during this busy week.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, and very nice to meet you too. Thanks for everything.
Thanks for listening to A New Angle. We really appreciate it. And we're coming to you from Studio 49, a generous gift from UM alums Michelle and Lauren Hansen. A New Angle is presented by First Security Bank, Blackfoot Communications, and the University of Montana College of Business. With additional support from Consolidated Electrical Distributors, Drum Coffee, and Montana Public Radio. Keely Larson is our producer. VTO, Jeff Ament, and John Wicks made our music. Editing by Nick Mott. Social media by AJ Williams, and Jeff Neese is our master of all things sound. Thanks a lot, and see you next time.